So 10 years ago, we were, in the final third of our career and working lives. And I'm thinking, how do we set ourselves up financially for financial success in retirement? And I was thinking real estate. And Karen suggested writing fiction together. And so we write fiction together. So we were making money off of gay male stuff, but we really wanted to write some lesbian stuff. And we kept getting told, oh, it doesn't sell, it doesn't sell. But Karen wanted to write some. I'm like, okay, fine, it doesn't sell. We're going to write some. And it sold. It sold really well. And I was like, we can make money off of lesbian fiction? We don't have to write gay male fiction anymore? That's the best.
And we self-published.
Welcome to the Stark Reflections on Writing and Publishing podcast. There has never been a better time for writers. More information, options, and opportunities are available to you, but navigating these requires insight. Join Mark Leslie Lefebvre as he draws upon more than a quarter century of experience as a writer, a bookseller, and a trusted book industry consultant to explore and reflect on the writing and publishing landscape to help you make informed choices on your writer journey.
Hello, Reflectives, and welcome to episode 343 of the Stark Reflections podcast. This is your host, Mark Leslie Lefebvre. In today's episode, I have an interview with Elizabeth Andre. Elizabeth Andre has been self-publishing lesbian fiction since 2014. She writes cozy paranormal mystery, lesbian romance, science fiction, and young adult stories. Before turning her hand to fiction, she was a newspaper reporter for many years, and she has the paper cuts to prove it. She has won many writing awards, including a Goldie from the Golden Crown Literary Society for Fiction, and a Peter Lisgar Award from the Chicago Headline Club for Journalism. And, as cool as Elizabeth Andre sounds, her story gets even cooler. That's because Elizabeth Andre is actually two people, a married interracial same-sex couple, Karen and Victoria. The three of us talk about their journey through writing, how they came to start writing together under the name Elizabeth Andre, their new book, Self-Publishing Lesbian Fiction, and so much more. And that's coming up later in this episode. But first, let's hear a word about this episode's sponsor. This episode is sponsored by ScribeCount. Spend less time crunching numbers and more time writing. With ScribeCount, there's no need to log into multiple retail and distribution platforms to check on your sales. You can access all the main ebook, print, and audiobook sales platforms, as well as several direct sales platforms via a single, simple interface within seconds. You see, ScribeCount leaves nothing out. You can see your sales across the globe or drill down to a single marketplace. It's all right there at your fingertips. ScribeCount offers simple, easy to understand graphics, the data you need with the filters to go with it. With their unique and interactive sunburst chart, you can see your entire library of book sales in one place. And you can click the rings and drill down on a single platform or a single book. There are also ways to add in manual offline sales, such as the ones that I do when I attend local and in-person book fairs. And if you use aggregators, such as Draft to Digital like I do, they can be shown as one platform or broken out into the sub-platforms that they distribute to. It's all right there, customizable with the click of a button. Now, if you want to spend less time logging into multiple dashboards and more time focusing on what truly matters, what truly makes a difference, writing and marketing your books, you should really check out ScribeCount. And you can learn more about ScribeCount via my affiliate link over at starkreflections.ca/ScribeCount. And now for comments from recent episodes. Over on YouTube for episode 342, which is my special Between Fridays bonus episode where I shared an essay on looking at publishing trends for 2024, Guy Anthony DeMarco said, I do my best to keep my drafts folder empty because it stands out when there's something in there that I didn't expect. Hope your 2024 is amazing, Mark. Thanks, Guy. And this is important. So he's referring to, for that episode, I neglected to send my essay over to the good folks at Written Word Media for their annual post. And so I had this unused piece of work, and I reused it, or used it, I should say, in episode 342. But yeah, that's a great strategy for noticing that there's something in your draft folder, because I have hundreds of things in my draft folder. I really should go clean that out. Maybe I'll even do that after I finish this. But thanks, and hope your 2024 is also amazing. And hang on, let me pronounce this properly. Lish Koberger 12 on YouTube said, "Can't wait to see you at Superstars, Mark." Of course, when I looked into who Lish Koberger 12 on YouTube was, I know it's Nick. Thank you, Nick. Looking forward to seeing you in a few weeks at Superstars. And in a chat on Patreon, Don King mentioned following me back in the days when I worked for Kobo, and I did their ad reads and was a guest on Joanna Penn's podcast, The Creative Pen. Now, Don also mentioned a really useful thing in our chat there that I wanted to share with you, and it's how useful he finds the free Books to Read author page. He's in the middle of reworking his own author website and domain, but in the meantime, he's just directing folks to that page. So he's using books2read.com, and that's books2 with the numeral 2, read, / Don King, and that's Don with a double N, to riff on Joanna Penn's catchphrase. It's a great reminder of a free tool, though, and that's why I wanted to share it here. I mean, I use books2read.com / Mark Leslie for my own author profile. I like to think of it as a customizable author central for all the stores, and it can include links to your website and social media, etc. As well as there's a handy follow button there, which is an automated process where Draft Digital will automatically notify anyone who follows you of your new book releases for you. It's kind of like a mini newsletter type poke, especially if you don't send out a newsletter or you don't send it out regularly. It's just an extra reminder, and they do it automatically. And when you log into your Books to Read account, you can actually see how many people follow you. Now, they don't give you their information for privacy reasons, etc., but they do send that off on your behalf, which is great. But why not take advantage of a free tool? Now, I also have the books2read.com / Mark Leslie Lefebvre for my books on writers. But I do want to say thank you, Don, not just, of course, for being a patron, but also for that really great tip and that reminder of a tool that we can take advantage of and leverage. So that's it for the comments. In terms of a personal update, I'm just kind of going to forego that for this week, as I am a little bit behind in getting this podcast out the door. Why don't I get into this fantastic conversation that I had with Karen and Victoria about their brand, Elizabeth Andre, and of course their new book, Self-Publishing Lesbian Fiction. Karen, Victoria, welcome to the Stark Reflections podcast.
Yeah. Good afternoon.
Hi.
I wasn't sure if I should say Elizabeth Andre, welcome to the podcast, but Elizabeth Andre, welcome to the Stark Reflections podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you very much.
As people probably heard in the introduction, Elizabeth Andre is a pseudonym for the two of you writing together. And we will be talking about your book, Self-Publishing Lesbian Fiction, Write Your Own Way. Yes, awesomeness. But before we get to that, I want to dig into a little bit of the behind the scenes in terms of your origin stories, your superhero origin stories as writers, as book people. And you can decide who gets to go first.
Sure, I'll go first. Let's see. Well, I mean, I've been a storyteller from a very young age. I mean, I wasn't necessarily writing stories, but my younger brother, Andrew, and I, we'd play together a lot, and we'd come up with storylines for our toys, our stuffed toys, and the little Fisher Price little people things. And we'd set up a whole village in my brother's room. And it was very soap opera like. It was very, There were, so
serialized story then, right?
Yes, exactly. And we didn't actually watch soap operas of the day back then, but we knew that they involved things like
Not even
murder.
when you were homesick from school, like the watching soap operas and The Price is Right was.
No. My mother, if we were homesick from school, we were to stay in bed. We could not watch TV.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, we know there was murder, there was kidnapping, there were girl groups and boy groups, pop singing, infidelity, things like that. So it was fun. And it usually ended when my older brother would come home and he would sort of step in the village. There was, and
Wow.
So yeah, so from the time, when we were young, we would do that. And also, I really didn't start writing just to write stories until high school, I think, if I remember correctly. And I think I did take a creative writing class my senior year, I think, in high school, because I had a free period.
Yeah.
I think, one quarter. And I liked it. I liked making up, stories, because it, was like what my younger brother and I had been doing all along.
Right.
I don't even remember what those first stories were about. And in college, I took a fiction writing class. And that's when I really started to take it more seriously, take my talent more seriously.
Right.
I had a teacher who was very encouraging and supportive. So yeah, and then I ended up getting an MFA in fiction writing from the University of Massachusetts in Amherst, which I don't know if I think at the time I thought it was something I should do, if I wanted to be, a fiction writer, being taken seriously as a writer. But it was very much dedicated to, no genre fiction. It was mostly actually, because literary fiction is a genre. So it was very much devoted to literary fiction. And I wrote, I think I mostly liked the work I did for my thesis, but at least then, this was like in the late 80s, early 90s, they didn't teach you anything about the business of writing and publishing. It was very much people trying really, really hard to get their work published in the New Yorker, for example.
Right,
so that was the pinnacle. And actually, after that, I didn't really write fiction for a long time after I got my MFA. I did end up being a reporter at a daily newspaper out in Western Massachusetts. And that was actually a really good education because of it being a daily newspaper, you had to write very fast and very cleanly. I didn't have a lot of time to edit. And I remember the first story I wrote for the paper, it was about a wastewater treatment plant in one of the towns that I was covering. I had to rewrite that story like 6 times because, I came from fiction writing. I didn't know about the inverted pyramid of journalism and all that. I didn't go to J school. But again, I had colleagues who were willing to help me. The managing editor, even though he swore at us a lot and yelled at us a lot, he was actually really good about helping me understand writing for a newspaper. So, and it was fun. It was a lot of fun. Could be very stressful, but yeah, lots of fun. And it was also around this time where a friend of mine and I, it was actually at the end of grad school, I think it was. Or I think she was in grad school and I was already working. I already got my MFA, but we were sitting around talking about, oh, we need money. How are we going to earn some money? And I don't know how this came to us, but we figured, well, we can either sell drugs or write porn. So let's write porn. That seemed more respectable than selling drugs. So we started by writing gay male porn, and we did our research by going and getting magazines, off the newspaper racks, and that was interesting.
Right.
That was I won't get into many details here now, but the one of the more, I guess, funnest things about it was coming up with various euphemisms, sexy euphemisms for the male appendage. in the story. Yes.
Sounds like there could be a book on just that alone, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So, I mean, collaboration. I mean, we're talking about the collaboration the two of you are doing, but collaboration came really early with your brother. When you think about that, storytelling collaboration in a different method. So it seems like it's always been there.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess I hadn't thought about it that way, but yeah, it was very much the two of us feeding off each other, saying, oh yeah, then she does this, and yeah, and then that he gets a gun, and yeah. There was a lot of gunplay in our story. So, and I don't write anything like that, but as kids, it was an easy way to introduce tension and drama. Somebody's got a gun, so
Of course. Awesome.
yeah. But it was a long time before I wrote fiction again after getting my MFA. I think I felt stuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. So, so Victoria, what about your origin in terms of writing and
My origin. So I'm actually from a long line of writers. My father wrote pulp paperbacks in the 1960s,
wow.
like Swinger School, Sin Safari, Big Orgy. Am I allowed to use that word?
Yeah,
But
you can use that word. Yeah.
he wrote nurse romance. He wrote a lot of short stories for the women's romance magazines that were syndicated all over the world. So my father was a writer. There's just a lot of writers in the family.
Mhm.
And growing up, I did not want to be a writer. I wanted to be anything but a writer. I joined the high school math team. I
Yeah.
might have did math at college. And just, I guess some things are unavoidable.
Wow.
But so I first really got into writing really around high school. I started submitting to magazines, various poetry, nonfiction, short fiction. Didn't get very far, used the old writer's market books. And then in college, I discovered journalism, the student newspaper, which journalism, I mean, Karen has alluded to the high that is journalism. I mean, it's amazing. You come up with a story idea, you have to find the information, you have to interview people, and then you have to write this grammatically perfect story and hit your deadline. And if you don't hit that deadline, you are a failure. So there was the student newspaper. When I graduated from college in 1993, when the US was in the middle of a recession and newspapers were closing and I couldn't get a job, I responded to an ad in the Chicago Tribune for a writer to work with adult gay materials. And I spent a year and a half as a copywriter for a distributor of VHS videotapes of adult gay materials, the largest in the US. So I did that for a year and a half and learned a lot about male appendages. Saw a lot of them. I mean, 3 videos a day for a year and a half. And still wrote for like Honcho Overload and Play Guy throughout the 90s. I wrote for the UK edition of Penthouse. What was her name? Sherry Lovelace. I was their advice columnist for a little while.
You were Sherry Lovelace?
She was the advice
Yeah. It was a pseudonym that you wrote under.
Yeah, I mean, loads of people have been Sherry Lovelace.
Yeah.
I was one of the many people who've been Sherry Lovelace for the UK edition of Penthouse. And then at some point, I decided I wanted to go respectable. And I did do a master's in international journalism. So I'm a trained war correspondent. Never covered war. And so, but after I did the master's, I went to Phnom Penh and worked for the Cambodia Daily for a year and a half. That newspaper no longer exists. And then I went into health and science journalism in the US, in Chicago, hometown. And about 10 years ago, we started writing fiction together.
Wow.
So that is mostly my origin story. Lots of fun stuff. I have good stories.
Well, I was going to ask about, because in Elizabeth Andre's biography, Elizabeth Andre has a background in reporting. And I was like, oh, okay, so that's Karen's background, part of it. But no, it's also Victoria's. So did you merge, when you decided to write together, did you merge those backgrounds? How did that come about?
Well, we met at a gay journalist convention.
Okay.
And we started writing together, like you said, 10
years ago.
10 years ago. Because
10 years ago. So we're talking 2024, that'd be 2014 then, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
because up until then, other than us both having worked as journalists, we really didn't have that much in common.
We really
Well,
don't
no,
have
you also had the gay male background, right? Or writing or distributing. So
Yeah, but
we barely like the same TV
Yeah.
shows. I mean,
yeah,
we have a hard time finding stuff to do together. And we finally found something.
yes. I
Wow.
mean, but it's true. I mean, after I first met her family when we started dating, they said, "Yeah, well, she's nice, but what do you two have in common?" Like, so, and we realized early on that if we'd seen, because at one point both of us were on Match.com,
yeah.
and we realized if we'd seen each other's Match personal ads, we wouldn't have responded to them. We wouldn't have.
Really? But you met at this conference. Something
Yeah.
had to have started a spark, even if it was just friendship initially, right?
It was not friendship initially.
No.
Oh,
So
ooh, let's dig into the dirt here.
so here's what happened. So I'm going to tell the story.
Okay, go ahead.
So we meet at the journalist conference.
She flirted a lot.
I am very outgoing
with many other people.
and I'm a flirt.
Yes, she is.
Very flirtatious. And I received this email after the conference saying, would you like to go out for coffee or something equally non-threatening? Because Karen had read in a lesbian dating book that you should ask someone out for coffee or something equally non-threatening. And she had taken it literally.
That's what it said.
Love that.
That's what it said. Okay,
Because
so
coffee can be threatening to some people, right?
So I will say, okay, so my standards are, if someone asks me out on a date, I mean, obviously when I was single, not when I'm married,
Not now.
but
yeah.
not now, but if somebody asked me out on a date, if they had the chutzpah to ask me out on a date, first date, and it wasn't like an obvious no, like a man. But I would say yes, because, I would always give someone a chance.
Right.
And the first date, which was there are coffee dates and there are espresso dates. And this was a very long coffee date.
It was, yeah.
It did last a long time.
Several hours. Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
And,
do you guys already live in the same city or vicinity or?
Pretty
Yeah.
much.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. She was living in the city and I was living out in the suburbs
Okay.
with my parents at the time. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. Because I mean, that would have been a challenge, right? I was like, yeah, I'm going to fly across the country to go have a coffee with you. So,
But lesbians do that.
Yeah.
Just to make-
but you guys were both writers, writer background, right? And so you went out for this coffee that was obviously, it was more than just a date. It was like a long, something happened, something clicked. You guys did sync up somehow. At what point did you discover the idea to write together?
Well, this friend of mine, Lori, she's the one who we were thinking, oh, we could either, write porn or sell drugs. So she's still, a really good friend of mine, one of my best friends.
Yeah.
And so she kept on writing, in the gay male porn thing. And so she had started writing for a small press that published mostly, gay male romance, but, it's porn or erotica, they would call it.
Yes.
And so she was, kept, nudging me, say, hey, Karen, you should start doing this. You can make some money, And I think finally, what was the final thing? Because I guess she'd been saying for several months up until the time we decided to actually do it.
So 10 years ago, we were, in the final third of our career,
Right.
and working lives. And I'm thinking, how do we set ourselves up financially for financial success in retirement? And I was thinking real estate, and Karen suggested writing fiction together. And so we write fiction together, and we still have invested in real estate.
Okay. All right. Wow. So now we're going to be talking about your relatively new book, Self-Publishing Lesbian Fiction. How did you transition from gay male fiction and pornography, gay male erotic romance into lesbian fiction? Was that something you did jointly, or is that something like, how did that start?
So, okay. So in the 90s, so since we both wrote gay male stuff in the 90s,
Right.
a big motivator was you could make money off of gay male fiction.
Yeah.
You you couldn't make money off of lesbian fiction. You
Really?
know, Honor Backs magazine still owes me $35. And I still resent that. But which those who know lesbian porn and fiction and from the 90s will know Honor Backs magazine.
Yeah.
They still owe me $35. But
Oh man, we got to reach out to them on your behalf.
Good luck.
Good luck with that.
Yeah.
But one thing we discovered as we were going through self-publishing, and okay, so there is a kind of a zeitgeist. You know how stinking thinking can sometimes become self-fulfilling prophecies.
Right.
And there's a zeitgeist that, oh, lesbian fiction doesn't sell. But so we were making money off of gay male stuff, but we really wanted to write some lesbian stuff. And we kept getting told, oh, it doesn't sell, it doesn't sell.
Right.
But Karen wanted to write some. I'm like, okay, fine, it doesn't sell. We're going to write some. And it sold. It sold really well. And I was like, we can make money off of lesbian fiction. We can make, we don't have to write gay male fiction anymore. That's the best.
Yeah. And we self-published the lesbian fiction
Yeah.
from the get-go.
Initially,
The gay male, our early gay male stuff was published through this small press that my friend Lori was with.
Okay.
So, but we our lesbian stuff has always been self-published.
Just before we get into the self-publishing lesbian fiction, because I want to help authors with the logistics of how to do it properly, because that's where your expertise lies. Who reads and buys gay male fiction, and who reads and buys lesbian fiction?
So about 2/3 of the readers of gay male fiction are actually straight women.
Okay.
There's a lot of controversy around that issue. There are a lot of straight women who write gay male fiction or MM fiction. It's a controversy I don't want to get into, and just state those as facts. That so it's mostly women, mostly straight women who are reading gay male fiction. For lesbian fiction, it is primarily lesbians and bisexual women, queer women, non-binary folk. There are some men in the space.
Right.
I mean, when you compare kind of media consumption habits of men and women, regardless of sexual orientation or other factors, women tend to be bigger readers.
Of course. Yeah. The men may want to watch things, but they may not want to read it. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that kind of makes the lesbian market a little smaller. But here's the thing. The MM market, here's what's very important that people miss.
Right.
The MM fiction market, the gay male market, it's huge, but it's also dense. There are a lot of people in it.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to tell you that size doesn't matter. Density does. And the lesbian market it's smaller, but it's not as dense. There's a lot of room in it.
Right. Okay. I like the way you approach that. That is cool. Okay, so you guys were realizing that there is a market for lesbian fiction, not necessarily with the we think we know what we're doing traditional sales market, but in self-publishing, there's enough of a readership that you knew that this could work for you. So it did. Elizabeth Andre was born. Now we kind of talked about this a little bit, merging both of your biographies into Elizabeth Andre, but how did you come up with that? Because I'm saying, okay, so I go, we have Victoria and we have Karen, and it's not like, Karen Victoria or whatever the name was. How did you come up with Elizabeth Andre?
Well, that was me. My middle name is Elizabeth.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
And Andre is sort of the Frenchified version of my younger brother's name, which is Andrew.
Andrew, of course, you co-wrote with Andrew. Okay.
Yeah.
Or co-story told.
Yes, we made up stories.
Oh, that's kind of cool. Awesome. And then so how, before we get into why you wrote the book and some of the other stuff specifically about the book, I'm curious about how the two of you write together when it comes to fiction, and then of course the difference when you put this book together, how you divide the tasks up, etc.
It's I think for each story it tends to be different. It's sometimes I come up with the idea and then I will do most of the first draft, or if all, the entire first draft, and then hand it off to her. We do everything in Google Drive.
Okay.
And, then if it's her idea, then something similar will happen. Or there have been times when we're both writing in the same document when it's at the same stage, in the process. So not waiting until she's finished with the first draft or I'm finished with a draft and then doing things. So, but I think lately it's mostly been that form of it where, you do the first draft and I do the second, so.
Or you take the first draft and I
Yeah.
take the second.
Mhm.
It kind of gets passed back and forth.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
and there is things about, trying to make sure the voice is consistent in the
Okay.
story. So yes, and, I think that's something that, I'm mindful of when I'm going through the draft. And also there are different things. We have different strengths.
Right.
As Victor say, I'm better at dialogue, where she's better at the sex scenes, and I have written, stuff where I'm coming along, and then and then I'll put, parentheses, insert sex scene here or something like that,
Right.
and then she'll put.
Oh, there you go.
It's
My
like
turn.
wrestling, right? Where you're like, okay, I'm going to tag you in now. You can take care of this part. Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
All right.
Yeah.
So we've got the book Self-Publishing Lesbian Fiction. And obviously, so the reason you wrote and published this book that we're both holding is who's it for? I guess who should read this book and what are they going to get out of it?
So, I mean, the way I describe it is, I have had non-lesbians read it and say, oh, well, this is actually a really well-written book. It's got a lot of good self-publishing information for everyone. It's
Okay.
obviously tailored to lesbian
Which is
fiction.
true. Yeah.
Which is true.
There's a lot of good information.
Self-publishing lesbian fiction is not that different. The way I think of it is, it's kind of like the difference between an off-the-rack suit and a tailored suit. An off-the-rack suit is fine. This is tailored to lesbian fiction.
Right. Okay. So
And
the
this is-
examples are going to be very specifically not, I published this romance novel. I
Yeah.
published this lesbian romance novel. Okay.
Exactly. And there are a lot of stories from our own experiences.
Okay.
And the way I envision it, this has gotten some good 5-star reviews
Yeah.
and some very positive feedback.
Mhm.
The modern we started in 2014 when it was pretty much
Early. Yeah.
Kindle Direct Publishing, Smashwords, and all romance ebooks, if you remember them.
I remember them.
It was $45.
Yeah,
They owe you
Um,
45. Yeah, someone owes you 35, 45. I've got the tally of who owes you what.
I never forget a debt. But anyway, but now you have a lot. I know Smashwords and Draft to Digital are merging, but you can publish on Kobo and you can publish on Google Play, and there are all these players in the market, and it's really overwhelming. And there are some good hybrid publishers. I hate the word hybrid publishers, but
You mean the scammers who
sellers
try
of
to masquerade as publishers? Sorry.
okay, you said it. The sellers of self-publishing services.
Yeah.
And we saw people getting scammed, losing their books,
Losing the rights to
their books.
Yeah.
That breaks my heart when when someone's creative product has their baby has been hurt. It bothers me.
Right.
And the goal of this book is really to simplify the process. And honestly, the first thing in this book, it says you need to identify your goals. What do you actually want? What do you want to do, and why do you want to do it? Yeah. And that is going to determine whether you publish on 10 different platforms or one, or if you write your memoir, or if you write a 10-book series. And it really is intended for the writers of lesbian fiction. Sapphic fiction has become a more popular term.
Yeah.
The reason, which Sapphic fiction is a little more inclusive of bisexual women and non-binary. The challenge of the term Sapphic fiction is some people don't know what it means.
Yeah.
Which is why I say Sapphic and lesbian fiction, or lesbian and Sapphic fiction. I think WLW seems to be kind of women loving women. That seems to be falling out of favor a little bit. Queer is a popular term, but certain generations will kind of really bristle at that.
Right. So a
So yeah,
sapphic is a term I had not heard until relatively recently, and I had to look it up, and I went, "Oh, lesbian fiction." But it's
Mhm.
more, right? But again, it's more than just lesbian fiction. It's a little bit more inclusive, I guess. Is that?
yeah, queer fiction, non-binary,
Yeah.
asexual, trans.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. So it is inclusive of multiple
Yeah,
ways to approach. Okay.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's interesting, but I didn't know the term, and I went, oh. And I realized it has this history of this use, and you go into ancient ancient anyway. Okay, sorry, I digress. I digress. But
so
obviously there's going to be barriers, right, in terms of publishing lesbian fiction, because there are going to be people who get their backs up or would stick their noses in the air or whatever it is. What are some of the barriers for writers when they're wanting to publish lesbian fiction?
well, I mean, like we were talking a little bit about this before, we got on this Zoom with you, but I think the biggest barrier is the writer herself sometimes.
Thinking that only gay male fiction sells.
That
Okay.
and also like as you mentioned, being unsure of how, even if a writer is publishing, they're saying, oh well, I'm going to target lesbians, they're going to be my readers. I mean, you can still run into people who say that you're doing something wrong. I mean, in one of our books, we wrote a time travel romance. And
Okay.
one of the reviewers said we were doing time travel wrong, which I found interesting because time travel
Because
doesn't
I
happen.
because I know how it really works.
Yeah, exactly. And it could just, or it could be something like, some readers can be very, what's the word, very critical. There's something else I'm looking for, but just
prudish,
hmm,
prudish.
prudish.
British,
Is
particular.
one, yeah, one, yeah, not, yeah, exactly, not wanting, and not wanting you, not liking if you refer to certain body parts with some, certain types of
Certain
slang,
language. Yeah, I get that. Okay.
So I think that can be, you end up just paralyzed. And so
Some writers try to please everyone, which you cannot.
you can't do.
I'm always
Yeah.
okay. We actually have this one person who has reviewed she's reviewed so many of our books,
Right.
and she always says there's too much sex in there. And I'm like, at some point, when are you going to stop reading us? Like,
Yeah,
we're
she
clearly
keeps
not.
reading it.
Yeah,
Wow.
she keeps reading it. I keep saying there's too much sex in it. I'm like, I don't think we're for you, and that's
Yeah.
okay.
Just
Mhm.
fast forward through the sex scenes and get to the plot.
Like,
Yeah.
stop torturing yourself.
Yeah,
It's
just
all
don't. There are other books you can read.
Wow.
Mhm.
But yes, the biggest barriers. I do see authors trying to please everyone,
Yeah.
which is the
Mhm.
guaranteed route to failure,
Mhm.
or
Mm.
route out.
I'm also thinking, like, there are more traditional publishers that are, have, started publishing more lesbian, lesfic, or sapphic fiction. It's still a drop in the bucket compared to,
Yeah, yeah. They're basically they're trying to please everyone
Yeah.
in
yeah.
many ways. Yeah.
But where was I going with this? I think that there's still a sort of attitude of, well, that self-publishing is still, much is lower than tradition. They really don't see it as an option because, well, I'm not a real writer until, my agent can get my book with I don't know, Simon and Schuster or one of their imprints or whatever,
Right.
Or they think self-publishing is hard. It's not.
I
See,
think it's hard.
I want to make it clear that self-publishing is actually easier than you think it is.
Ah. And the
I mean,
answers
it is,
appear in the book Self-Publishing Lesbian Fiction, of course, right?
of course. It's so easy.
Mhm.
No, I have
Yeah.
to I have to ask, mansplaining is just rampant across the world. Do you get mansplained self-publishing lesbian fiction in a similar way?
When was the last time we had a mansplain?
I don't know.
Well, I mean,
I don't.
I don't want to name certain relatives.
You didn't write this scene properly because I know better as a heterosexual male.
We get that much.
I mean, I haven't
Yeah.
noticed it. I think it's partly because
It's just my relatives.
well, it's just your relative. No. I think it's
So those uncomfortable
But I think-
Thanksgiving dinners. Okay, Uncle
I
Charlie.
think it's
I'm from a family of writers.
Okay.
I
Oh,
mean,
okay, of course. Yeah,
think
that's
that-
right.
I think generally speaking, there's a way in which lesbians are still kind of invisible. They're not taken seriously.
Okay.
Serious.
Yeah, we're not. Yeah.
We just keep flying under the radar,
Mhm,
publishing our books, making our money, being happy.
mhm.
And no
Well, I
one
guess that can be a
notices.
good thing, right? Yeah, because if you're not on the radar, then you're hitting markets that the traditional publishers have no idea how to hit.
Oh,
And you're not
Mhm.
getting bombarded with idiocy in some places, right? Okay.
I mean, we're amazing. I mean, we sell our books in countries where we are illegal.
Mhm.
And that to me is just like it's the best feeling. And I don't know who this person is. I don't know how they got to us or why, but
Mhm.
it makes me happy that we've been allowed this little bit of glimmer. And who knows? They could have just have downloaded a free book and be like, oh, let's see what they're writing over there.
Yeah. And yeah, someone in, what was it? We've sold in Democratic Republic of the Congo and
Ethiopia.
and
Florida.
And-
yeah.
Florida.
Countries
Yeah,
where,
Florida.
yeah.
Well, we actually like we this like it's a gay male interracial Jewish monster story, and it's in
Okay.
like the Mississippi library system.
Wow, okay.
You know, this
Yay
is
for
the joy of
libraries.
Yes.
woohoo! Libraries rock.
Yeah.
You know, our books will show up in random places, and that is a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, one of the points I actually make in the book is that self-publishing overcomes so many of the barriers of traditional publishing, because there was a stat I cited, something like a quarter of the top authors in traditional publishing are female. In
Mhm.
self-publishing, it's 3/4 of the top authors are women.
Wow.
It's reverse. So self-publishing provides, you've got me on my favorite soapbox. It just is this amazing channel to get our stories out there.
Mhm.
And I'm not talking about just, oh, write a memoir. I'm
Mhm.
talking about the Black lesbian interracial time travel love story set in Edwardian England.
Okay. Is one of the ones that you guys have written?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the time slip girl.
That's where we did time travel.
Yeah, give us some titles for people who may be interested in checking these out.
So the time slip girl, Right Time for Love, which features two 65-year-old women. It's sexually explicit and does address the very important issue of vaginal dryness, which
Very important.
it's
Yeah.
once you hit 65,
Lube.
which I'm not there yet.
Lube.
Lube is your friend.
Okay. But again,
you know,
you're for a market of readers who want that, because there's maybe not as much of it available on the market. Everyone's in their 20s or whatever, right? And just getting out of a chair is hard for me at my age. So therefore, yeah.
but yeah, I mean, sexually explicit stories for people who are middle age. People want those stories.
Right. Yeah.
You know,
So
like
as a same-sex couple, as an interracial couple, you probably met barriers in publishing. Is self-publishing removed all those barriers, or are there still barriers within that space?
Sure. I mean, I'm going to be honest about the data. When we put a Black person on the cover, the sales will be fewer. There will be less.
Yeah.
You know, there's plenty of racism within the lesbian community, within the LGBT
Mhm.
community, LGBTQ plus AI. You get
Yeah,
it.
plus, yeah, we
Um,
know we
Quilt bag.
Quilt bag. That's what I think.
So there are, self-publishing removed the barrier of needing a publisher,
Mhm.
needing an agent. We don't have to do any of that.
Yeah.
And part of the reason we chose self-publishing is, we're old enough to remember sending manuscripts around with saisies.
Yeah.
And
Self-addressed
we
stamped
started self
envelopes. Sorry.
Yeah,
for those in the know,
for you kids.
if
Yeah.
you know, you know. And
Well, and
in our 40s, we're like,
yeah,
we just didn't want to. We
There
don't
was-
have time for
there,
that.
yeah, and I, one of the reasons why, I was, eager to start self-publishing was, we're not getting any younger, and I didn't want to go through the whole thing of like, querying, book publishers, and then,
Right.
waiting for a response, and then, which could take months. And then, if we got a book accepted, that could take a few years before that. And like, you know what, I want to see my book with, our pen name on it now. I don't want to wait. So like
yeah.
I said, I'm not getting any younger.
So yeah. So I mean, we started writing this in April. It was published in November.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
you didn't
No
have to wait
gatekeepers.
for,
I mean, but you talked about the barriers. That there are white lesbians who will not read books about Black lesbians. There are plenty of people who don't want to read about interracial relationships.
right.
And I do know, like at 20 books to 50,000, where they had Rave, the book expo. I mean, we did not personally experience any homophobia directed at us, although I suspect that's because we're kind of obvious, and that people who were homophobic just avoided us.
Right.
But there was an author who did report that she'd had some homophobic interactions, possibly because she was less obvious, and so people
Oh,
were in
so
the middle of
somebody said, "Oh, it's safe for me to say something to her because, or whatever." And wow,
Yeah, they didn't realize.
oh wait, I'm at a lesbian bookstall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Until she came out her books, and we're like,
wow,
Oh, I wouldn't read that.
yeah.
wow.
We live in a bubble. We live in a gay neighborhood in Chicago.
A very gay neighborhood.
Very gay neighborhood in Chicago.
Yeah, I think the zip code that we live in
has like the most same-sex married couples
Really?
in the state. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. When we leave the neighborhood, we're like, ooh, straight people.
Yeah.
Like, why are they moving in here?
Or we're driving.
Oh, look, a man and a woman, they're holding
They're
hands.
holding hands.
Oh, maybe they're just close brother and sister.
So, I mean, we live in a bubble.
So
Yeah. No, that's true. That does happen, right? We live in different bubbles. So I'm so excited. I'm so glad that you guys were willing to chat with me. I was so thrilled that I got to meet you at 20 books to 50K. I do hope next time we have a chance maybe to grab coffee in a non-threatening way, of course, together, because you guys are a hoot. You're a lot of fun to chat with. And I'm sorry, I didn't get a chance to chat with you for more than like 3 minutes at the event. But
It was a busy event.
It was
was.
very
And
good.
yeah.
we're all exhausted. Oh, it's a lot.
So for my listeners who also want more of you, where can they find more about Elizabeth Andre and the two of you, obviously?
Okay, so Elizabeth Andre, we are published wide, so as wide as we can possibly be. So we're obviously on Amazon, Ingram Spark. We're available in bookstores, Smashwords, which
Google
I
Play.
Google
There's some books on
Google Play,
Right.
Kobo.
Libraries, you
no.
can ask for your books at libraries as well.
Yes.
I mean, I cannot wait until the Smashwords draft to digital merger is finished. I bet you can't either. But just everywhere. Elizabeth Andre, lesbian fiction. We rock. We write really good books.
Awesome. Is there a website that people can find your stuff on? Like your own website that you guys manage or own?
Really need
That's
to.
something we're gonna do. We're gonna do it this year.
This year we're gonna get a
we're
website.
we're gonna get a website.
And
This
you've
year.
heard it here, folks. You heard it here. Elizabeth Andre is going to have her own website.
And we're on TikTok, and we're on Facebook, and we're on Twitter,
Instagram,
and we're on Instagram.
All right. So you're going to provide links to all those awesome places where we can find your books and where we can find you too on social media. And that'll be at starkreflections.ca. Victoria, Karen, Elizabeth, Andre, thank you so much for joining me here on this podcast.
Welcome. Thank you.
You're most
Thank you
welcome.
for having us.
It's lovely.
A lot of fun.
There's a couple things I want to reflect on, notes that I took as I was listening back to the interview. The first were the serialized storytelling done in play as a child. Early in the podcast, Karen talked about earliest memories of playtime stories with her younger brother. and doing the soap opera kind of serialized stories. And it's so funny. I was just, as I was listening to her talk about that, I thought about how I did that. Now, I didn't have any siblings, or I didn't grow up with any siblings. And so I did a lot of that playtime myself with my little Fisher-Price characters. And I would often tell myself serialized stories inspired from, television programs that I was enjoying. And yeah, the soap operas were always on in the background with my mom and my baba. And of course, the comic books, because I was huge into Spider-Man and stuff like that, which is very, monthly serialization. And so I often, she had that with her brother, which was kind of cool because they shared that as a common fun thing. And it was kind of like this early collaboration that, happened later in life with her partner. So that's kind of cool. But it was just really interesting how our origins sometimes as storytellers, as writers, come out in different ways. And I'm always fascinated by different creative people who do tell story in different ways. I mean, very clearly, very obviously, you have cartoonists and artists and musicians and stuff, and it's all story. It's all about, humanity and human connection and stuff like that. So pretty much all of the arts cover storytelling. But I even had a mentor in high school math teacher, Jim Turcotte. There is a special episode where I talk about, thanking him for his inspiration as in one of those special episodes that I occasionally do, the solo ones. And I just remember him being really positive. He loved math and physics. And he said this to me one day, because I was, thinking, creativity and writing is the thing. And he always found that solving math problems was creative. And he was also a very creative person. He was a DJ. I learned I learned the storytelling of DJing from him. The highs and the lows, and getting people up and moving around, and then slowing them down again, and giving them a song that was a great song that they enjoyed, but they maybe didn't want to dance to, so they can go get a drink or go to the washroom or whatever for a lot of the weddings and parties that we did. So I learned different aspects of storytelling from outside actual writing. And that's the thing I want to reflect on, is how we can learn from people from across different industries, even if it's not one of the arts or creative industries. And then the other thing was the mention later on in the interview of tailored versus off the rack. And that was used to describe, there's books on self-publishing, but this is very specifically a tailored suit for lesbian fiction specifically, or Sapphic fiction, etc. And I think that's really important. And it just reminds me, and I will continue to hammer this home, this value of us as authors, in the fact that, yes, somebody else can write lesbian fiction, somebody else can write mystery, somebody else can write cozy, somebody else can write urban fantasy or horror or science fiction or space opera, historical fiction, whatever it is, but they can't write it the way you write it. And you are very unique. Your own unique voice, your own unique perspective, your own unique author brand. Elizabeth Andre is an author brand. Yeah, very, very open, very transparent that it's an author brand of two writers who are working together, but it creates that brand that's very, very specific, very tailored to their specific readerships, which is really kind of an important thing for us to remember when we're thinking about our own author branding, and we're thinking about the great value that we, as writers, can bring to our reading community. That's tailored. It's not cookie cutter. It's very specific to us. And that's really just me wanting to remind you that you, dear writer, bring something very unique and very special to the world that nobody else can do. So that's it for my reflections from this episode. I want to thank you so much for listening. I want to thank Karen and Victoria for the wonderful conversation. I'm so glad we had a chance to connect in person at 20 Books, and that they were willing to come on the podcast and chat with me. There'll be links to their social media, to their book, etc., over on in the show notes for starkreflections.ca. But again, you can just search for that book, and it should be available wide, everywhere that books are available. And I want to say a special thank you to you, dear listener, for listening to the podcast. You being there listening means so much to me. One of the ways you can help me is, of course, becoming a patron of the podcast over at patreon.com/starkreflections. And of course, a huge thank you to all the patrons who support the podcast at patreon.com/Stark Reflections, which I just said. And a reminder that there is a special audio feed for patrons only, and I'll have a link to how to access that if you are a patron and you haven't had access to the special audio episodes of the podcast that come out semi-regularly in a separate feed just for patrons. But you can also support the podcast, of course, by leaving comments, by leaving reviews, or by sharing this podcast with somebody else that you think would find value in it. But that is it for episode 343. Until next week, and until next episode, this is Mark Leslie Lefebvre wishing you, dear listener, great writing and good Stark Reflections.
Thank you for listening to the Stark Reflections podcast. You can find show notes for each episode at starkreflections.ca.
The music for this podcast, Laser Groove, was composed and produced by Kevin MacLeod. Check out more of Kevin's great music at incomptech.com.